Welcome back. You are watching Showdown. Thanks very much for your company. In a moment, I'm going to be speaking to Stuart Robert out of Brisbane. But joining me here in the studio are a pair of Labor hacks, Hugh McDermott and Peter Bentley. Welcome to the program, both of you. Good to have you on board. Sit there and look pretty, or a distant cousin of. I'm going to have a quick chat to Stuart Robert first, the shadow spokesperson for Defence Science. Welcome to the program, Mr. Robert.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be here.
You really need an S after that last name, because Robert is a last name. It's supposed to be a first name, but I'll struggle through.
Excellent.
Can I just ask you, straight off the top, I'm a bit confused. Does the Coalition think that the PNG plan will work, as Malcolm Turnbull says, or it won't work, as Tony Abbott says?
Well, Scott Morrison and Tony Abbott have made it quite clear it's a con. It's a farce. It's a quick election fix that Kevin Rudd is putting in place. He created the problem, and what he's put in place will not solve it.
But it's one that Malcolm Turnbull at least doesn't agree with that prognosis.
Well, I think what's important here is the two people who are closest to the issue, the two people who are carrying the weight of the coalition and are spokespeople for this issue, which is Tony Abbott and Scott Morrison, are both adamant. They've both come across and said very clearly it won't work. We've seen in the Australian today, George Brandis QC has pulled apart the agreement. 11 paragraphs, 6 are rhetoric, 3 deal with timing and cost, and just two small paragraphs deal with transfer and resettlement. I think everyone can see it's a con.
Well, not everyone, because Malcolm Turnbull thinks it's going to work. Is he just playing games, do you think?
Well, all I focus on is if I want to know what's happening in immigration, I listen to Scott Morrison. If I want to know what's happening in education, I listen to Christopher Pyne. If people want to know what's happening in defence, they listen to Senator Johnson and myself. Scott Morrison and Tony Abbott are pretty adamant on this.
But then what is it that is going on with Malcolm Turnbull? Because he has said it publicly. It's not some private conversation that's been subsequently reported. In an actual interview on television, he has said that he thinks that the PNG plan will work. Should he have just not gone there because he doesn't know anything about it?
I can't speak for Malcolm, but if you look at the plan gives no obligations, it gives no guarantees, it doesn't say all asylum seekers will go there. It makes it very clear that women and small children won't go there. Those who are security or health risk won't go there. Yesterday, Prime Minister O'Neill made it very clear that the capacity of Manus will dictate it, and that's about 600, and that number will be reached in about 6 days at the current rate, since we've had 200 in the last 4 days. This is a con. It's an election fix. It's a farce. This will not fix the problem. Just
on one of those issues, though, can I pick up on that? Women and children won't be in detention in Manus, but according to the arrangements, they will actually be settled in Papua New Guinea if they're found to be genuine refugees. That's correct, isn't it?
Well, the agreement doesn't say that. And that's one of the great problems. The agreement doesn't say very much at all. There are only 2 paragraphs that speak in generality that doesn't go into the details. So we actually don't know. But what we do know is Prime Minister O'Neill will determine who comes to his country and, dare I say, the circumstances in which they come. And none of that is mandated in the agreement.
I want to move on from this, but I want to get an answer to it if I can. What do you think was going on in Malcolm Turnbull's thinking to say publicly that he thinks it is going to succeed? Do you think he's playing games, or do you just think he's ill-informed? Because at the end of the day, from what you've said so far, that's really the only 2 choices, isn't it? He's either playing games or he's ill-informed, according to what you've said.
Well, Peter, it's a long stretch to ask someone to comment on what's going on in another person's mind. I dare say I wouldn't go there even to make comment upon what's going on in my wife's mind at times.
He's been unhelpful. Is that a fair comment? He's been unhelpful from the perspective of the coalition. If, as you say, it's a farce and it's a con, and Tony Abbott and Scott Morrison are on the same page, clearly, as you are on that, then Malcolm Turnbull is, at the very least, being unhelpful accidentally for the cause of the coalition. Would you agree with that?
Well, Tony Abbott's on the same page, Julie Bishop is, George Brandis is, the entire defence team, the immigration and customs team. So everyone in the national security area in the coalition is of one accord and one mind on this, and that, I think, is the key message for the Australian people, Peter.
So keep, and I'd add on to the back of that the message of keep Malcolm Turnbull away from strategic decision-making outside of his communications portfolio from what's been said. But we will move on. Let's talk about the issue. What is so wrong? Kevin Rudd denies this, of course, but the Papua New Guinean Prime Minister has all but said this. What is so wrong with Papua New Guinea having say over where the $500 million of the Australian aid budget goes in PNG?
Well, there are some great discrepancies here. On the 20th of August 2008, the Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Rudd, the first time round, signed an MOU with PNG on exactly how aid would be done. So I gather that's now been scrapped, although Prime Minister Rudd won't tell us how it's been scrapped. We've always mandated that our aid budget will be spent under the purview of the Australian government. And taxpayers rightly want to know that there is oversight and accountability of where their taxes, their hard-earned money has gone. In no other jurisdiction do we throw money and say to the receiving country, you spend it on whatever you want. And we're not going to make an exception with PNG. And the fact that Prime Minister Rudd has put in place this agreement, and it appears that the quid pro quo is PNG, you can spend this money on whatever you want, fails the transparency and fails the accountability rules.
What worries you most? Is it that you worry about the core competence of the PNG government to be able to make suggestions or indeed allocate that $500 million, or is it purely that you think that it's Aussie dollars, so we decide where it goes and the circumstances in which it's spent?
It's incredibly poor practice to say to any nation, and we're not singling out Papua New Guinea here at all, a country I've spent considerable time in. I've served in the military over there, I've walked the Kokoda Trail, I spent 5 months in Bougainville during the Civil War there, so I know and love its people and its place. However, for every country, for every jurisdiction, we have agreements on exactly how Australian taxpayers' money is spent, what the oversight is, what the accountability are, and the idea that we would have an exception for one of our neighbours because Kevin needs a political fix, I think is outrageous.
Do you think that the scheme has the chance of working in principle, though? Because I can't think of a more horrible place to live, quite frankly. So if at the end of the day the argument here is that if you try to get to Australia by boat and you do end up in PNG. I know you're sceptical of whether that will happen, but assuming that what Kevin Rudd, our Prime Minister, says is right on that, that's got to work, doesn't it? Because there's nowhere else you'd less rather be.
Scott Morrison's made the very good point that if we are elected by the good graces of the Australian people, we'll try and resurrect what we can. We've always said that we'll use Manus Island as well as Nauru as part of our offshore processing. So in that respect, there may be parts of it that are indeed workable. But the problem here is it's now been, 4 days since this was announced last Friday, maybe 5 days. Under the Malaysian solution, people were going there in 72 hours. Well, no one has left for Manus Island right now. It's been 5 days and no one has left. 214 odd people have arrived by boat since Friday when this was announced.
I've got to interrupt on that. You can't blame them for not sending people that quickly. We can have a different argument whether they should be sending people to Papua New Guinea, but you can't send people quickly there because there's all but a cholera outbreak in PNG. I mean, people need to get a whole bunch of jabs and a whole bunch of health checks not before you can inflict the asylum seekers on PNG, but before you can inflict PNG on them.
Then what sort of deterrent is it? And this was the issue.
That's a hell of a deterrent. I wouldn't go anywhere near the place without a few needles.
The Malaysian solution was, we'll move you in 72 hours. Well, no one is moving. No one is going to Manus Island. Nauru is in flames. It'll take until January, at the current contractors' estimates, to build 600 or places for 600 people. Well, 600 people will have arrived by boats at the current rate since this announcement on Friday in less than a week. And there's reports that 10 more boats are on the way. Where is the deterrent value of this announcement?
So is that the yardstick you think going forward? If a week or two from now, if the number of boats come in have slowed or indeed stopped altogether, is that the point at which you do concede it's a deterrent and then move on to another argument about whether or not it will last the 12 months or whether indeed the Manus Island facility will in time fill up and that will restart the boats? That's got to be the yardstick, doesn't it, Mr. Robert, is this idea of if the boats do stop in the next couple of weeks, then it works. If they don't, and they haven't, I accept that, in the last 48 hours or so, then it fails.
Well, I'll leave Scott Morrison to make declaratory statements in terms of whether government policy in this space is working or otherwise, as he leaves issues of defence to me. The single point is, if you're going to have a deterrent, be a deterrent. Send people there now. But if I was to call Strategic Lift Command out of Sydney now and say how many C-17s are flying people to PNG now, asylum seekers, I bet the answer from a one-star will be none. And that's the problem. All
right, stay with us, Stuart Robert. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, Michael Danby's just jumped into the chair here. We're going to be asking him in a moment how it is that someone with a Labor soul can be sending helpless people to a place like PNG. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Quattro Drive has been extended to July 31 with free CTP insurance, free registration, free stamp duty and free metallic paint. It all adds up to gripping value on a wide range of Audi Quattro all-wheel drive models. Plus, take advantage of an exceptional finance offer on A4 Quattro models. Hurry, Audi Quattro Drive must end July 31. Visit your Audi dealer or audi.com.au today.
For penny pinching value, go to Hungry Jack's. Because now you can get 5 chicken nuggets for just $2. That's right, just $2. It's all part of our great value penny pincher snacks. The burgers are better at Hungry Jack's.
New Osterlin OsteoGuard combines 6 key nutrients that help keep your bones stronger for longer. Defend your strength with new Osterlin OsteoGuard.
So, what's for dinner, big guy? It better be something fresh, or she'll know. She always knows. Good call. Crisis averted.
Think fresh. Think Latina.
I'm the cat with the bass and drum, going around like bum bum bum. What's moving? I'm moving. I like your style of romping. I'm charming, just a rapper, load him up and eat a snapper. When I go bum bum bum, bum bum. When I go bum bum
They've got a long way to go. Help give them a good start with Wheat Bix. 97% whole grain, 100% ready.
You ready? 1, 2, 3. You ready?
Get ready for the cricket at Liquorland.
You ready?
Knock off with ice cold slabs of VB. Get ready for the cricket with Victoria Bitter at Liquorland.
I'm riding your daughter's pony.
I've got your rock.
Got your jet ski.
The major banks and their low-interest accounts are stealing your dreams. Steal them back with a high-interest savings account from Ribo Direct. Visit ribodirect.com.au now.
With sizzling rally bred performance, exceptional power to weight ratio, sport suspension for razor sharp handling and serious road grip, the reassurance of 7 airbags and stability control, and a red-hot 1.9% finance rate. Swift Sport, hotter than ever.
Welcome back. You are watching Showdown. I've been speaking to Stuart Robert out of Brisbane. He's staying with us. I'll be coming back to him in a moment, but I want to bring Michael Danby in on the discussion. Welcome here. What are you doing in Sydney, by the way?
I was here doing an arts ministry thing with Tony Burke.
That's where you're supposed to say, I've come here for your show. But we'll move on. It's all right. I'll get past the snub. It's a hell of a snub, though, isn't it, last Friday, for Kevin Rudd to be standing up next to the Papua New Guinean Prime Minister and basically announcing, we think your country is such an awful place to live. Thanks very much for doing a deal with us because it should deter the boats. The mere thought that somebody might end up living where you live.
Well, look, we have to work as a country where you can't say that people coming under the current system by boat, where 1,100 people have drowned, is humanitarian. There's nothing left-wing about that.
Yeah, you're not answering my question. That was the message, though, wasn't it? The message was, Prime Minister O'Neill, it's great to have you on board. God, your country's horrible. Thank God for that, because we're going to be able to threaten people with the mere prospect that they have to live amongst you. I mean, that was the message.
You're giving a sort of an amusing bottom line to the whole thing, but seriously, if you're an Afghan, a Hazara living in parts of Afghanistan or Pakistan, you may still want to risk it. I understand those people, but
then it's not going to stop the boats.
But Peter, the problem is we can't let people outside the country, particularly commercial rings, determine who comes to this country. You can't have people saying that the people in refugee camps who should be under our humanitarian program coming here, they're excluded, but some people in Iran, who are probably a third of the immigration we're getting now by boat, they're okay. You just can't operate like that. Otherwise, you're going to have this thing go from, as it is, last year 5,000 to 20,000. What are we going to have, 50,000 next year, and you're going to say it's okay then?
But is the deal good enough? I mean, Stuart Robert and I have been talking about this, and he's been making the pretty fair point that it's about the length of an op-ed. I mean, it's 2 pages. It doesn't really go into the kind of nuts and bolts that give Australia the protection that it probably wants on this arrangement going forward, in light of the fact that we are handing over a lot of control of a hell of a lot of money to get this deal in place.
Well, there'll be a lot of Australian government supervision of AusAid money, as there usually is in Papua New Guinea. I don't see why working with the Papua New Guineans on expanding some of the detention centres isn't an idea that won't work. I think people should be treated with dignity,
but can I ask
and that they're going to be done in a proper way between Australia and PNG.
There seems to be a disagreement of opinion here between Prime Minister Kevin Rudd and Prime Minister O'Neill from PNG, because he's all but declared that the money's going to go into his own private bank account and he'll be determining how it gets done, whereas Prime Minister Rudd says there'll be all these checks in place. Which one is it? I mean, who's right on this? Because they are at odds.
I think that's, I know you're amusing, but that's to the point of being trite to say it's going to his private bank account.
I'm not suggesting untoward by him, but government control, him as the leader,
well, the
making
Papua New Guineans will probably set these priorities in terms of where these detention centres are going to be, the welfare conditions, the working conditions of these people, particularly if some of them get processed as refugees into to Papua New Guinea. But of course, Australia supervises each project that is built over there with our taxpayers' money. And by the way, I think it's a bit cheeky of Stuart to say that the bar is that people are not deported within 24 hours or 48 hours. I mean, Tony Abbott was a former health minister. He knows that to be serious about all of these people, you have to have their health checks done. These things have to be done responsibly in an ordered way. I mean, it's just sort of setting a Daily Telegraph high bar, which is designed to sort of make the Labor Party or the Labor government look bad. It's silly.
Right of reply on that, Stuart Robert. I mean, how do you respond to that idea that you shouldn't be setting that kind of 24-hour, 48-hour time limit on it, given health checks?
Peter, I went to Bougainville as part of the response in the Civil War in '98, and I had 4 days' notice to go for 5 months. So the idea that you can't do things quickly, A, is nonsense, and B, the government's own plan for the Malaysian swap deal said 72 hours. That was the government's own plan. So why is it they can operate 72 hours with one of their failed plans, and this failed plan they can't do it at all? They can either do it or they can't do it. Were they lying then or are they lying now?
Well, Michael Danby, that's not an unfair point by Stuart Robert when he went to Bougainville 4 days. And wouldn't it be in your interest to get them there as quickly as possible?
No one's doubting his patriotism. Of course we'll get them there as quickly as possible. We're going to treat these people in a dignified way. Their health checks are going to be done. People are not going to be abused. And of course the difference that when the Greens and the Liberals worked together on Malaysia to sink the government's plan, of course people could have been sent to Malaysia and immediately fitted into accommodation, given work, etc. The Liberals and the Greens work very effectively together to torpedo that.
Stuart Robert, can I ask you this one? This is a criticism that I've seen levelled at Tony Abbott for a lot of his raising of concerns about the deal is that doing so is an attempt to kill it for political reasons, every bit as much as Kevin Rudd's attempt to get the deal in place is probably overtly political as well. How do you respond to that?
Well, Prime Minister O'Neill yesterday said the capacity of number of people will determine how many people will go. So 600 is the capacity of Manus in January. That's in January. We're now in July. 200 people have arrived in the last 3 days. I think the average Australian can work out that it is just a con. There is no obligation. There is no mandatory taking of all people. PNG will only take those who are security and health vetted. Anyone who fails that will stay here. Children under the age of 7 will stay here with their parents. Seriously, it's a con. The number of exemptions now is becoming huge.
Stuart obviously doesn't want this to succeed. I mean, it's a con. There are people already in the pipeline coming here. You have to give it at least a week or 2 weeks or a little while to work to stop the flow of people coming. For instance, the ads in the newspapers. I know people are cynical about them, but with people who are relatives of all of these people who've come already to Australia, who are expecting family reunion, who are trying to get them on these boats, this is the primary way.
So you can put your hand on your heart, can you, Michael Danby, and say those ads are not about voters, they're about talking to the relatives of potential asylum seekers?
Well, you can be as cynical as you like about people's motives, but the point is that there is an element of communicating directly with people. Can you
I'm
put
sure
it?
there's a small element, but the primary element is, hey, here's a few million taxpayers' dollars to get the message across for votes.
The primary idea is to communicate with the people who are communicating with them by SMS, by information in the country that they want to come to, and this is the way to make sure that they know about it.
It's a perverse use of taxpayers' money for advertisements, Michael. You know it. The Australian people know it.
Well,
if you were serious about sending a message, you'd be taking up full-page advertisements in the Jakarta Times or whatever the local daily is over there.
Don't sell them short, Stuart Robert. I'm sure they're happy to spend the money there as well. But let me ask you about taxpayers' dollars. I'm getting sick of both sides on this sort of stuff, frankly, because we had John Howard in 1995 railing against the money being spent on the One Nation message, not the One Nation Party, the One Nation message of Paul Keating. We then had John Howard in government spending copious amounts of dollars on taxpayers' advertising, including towards the end with work choices. We then had Kevin Rudd railing against the spend on work choices, saying this has got to stop, it's a disgrace. We've now got the coalition railing against Kevin Rudd's spend in terms of government taxpayer advertising on this score. When is someone going to stand up and actually truly put this to an end? Do you think there's any chance of you guys doing it in government?
Well, let's hold Kevin Rudd to account for what he said in 2007. He said any expenditure 3 months out from an election must be agreed with the opposition leader. I don't see him calling Tony Abbott. He said that this sort of advertising or advertising must stop, that there'll be a special body that it'll go through. And of course the Auditor General has shown that he's completely thrown those policies out the window.
And I agree with you on that. I agree he has, but I guess what I'm asking is there any chance of him not just being yet another PM who throws that stuff out the window? Is there a chance that Tony Abbott, when he comes in, will actually stick to the line that so many opposition leaders claim they will do as Prime Minister and change
Peter,
the rules?
Let's hold people to their word, because we shouldn't be liberal and light with the truth. And right now we have a Prime Minister who is shown not to be truthful. A Prime Minister who said 3 months out from an election he would include the opposition leader on all government advertisements. This is a Prime Minister that says one thing and does another thing when everyone else is not watching.
Michael Danby, it's a fair point.
Tony Abbott is the man who said initially that he supported this proposal to have people sent to Papua New Guinea as a way of deterring this increasing number of people arriving by boat. Now, I actually think the policy issue is actually more important than negativity about this side of politics or that side of politics. Come on, Stuart, if we're in the Australian national interest, if we want to stop these people, will you support this being, if it's successful, if people start drying up, will you continue to support the government on it, or will you continue to play politics and say, no, because Labor's doing it, can't possibly be successful, or us support it?
Michael, after 6 years, you talk of national interest, 10 billion in coin, 1,000 people dead and 47,000 people.
So if people want to stop it, you're against it.
Your 8th attempt to try and get something right at the last minute, and you speak of the national interest. Well, let me tell you about the national interest. The coalition will stop the boats. We'll turn them around where it's safe to do so. You will not get a permanent protection visa when you come to Australia. You'll get a temporary protection visa. We'll process you offshore and we will stop it.
Stuart Robert, can I ask you a question about TPVs just quickly? There has to be an end point, doesn't there? I wonder how long can someone stay on a TPV under coalition policy? Is it 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? Presumably there has to be a point at which they are provided with permanent residency.
No, there comes a point where their country is safe for them to return. Remember, the Refugee Convention never envisaged permanent settlement.
Sorry to interrupt, but I need to ask about that, because some wars are ongoing for more than 10 years. So does that mean that you could arrive in Australia, have 3 kids while you're here, get married, and end up in a situation where you're on a permanent TPV?
The intent of the convention was that there would be temporary protection until such time as it's safe to go home. Now, you're seeing that in Israel right now. You're seeing South Sudanese being repatriated back to South Sudan as a new nation. And that's where the convention is being shown to work.
All right, we're going to move on to other issues after the break, but just before we get to the break, Michael Danby, one more question on this.
Yep.
Why didn't Kevin Rudd, if this is truly in the national interest, when he announced it on Friday, why didn't he, as part of his rhetoric, look to bring Tony Abbott into the tent? And I think that has a strategic value to go with it as well. Had he approached this as a bipartisan issue and offered the opportunity for Abbott to come on board, I actually think it would have played a political message, because it would have nullified Tony Abbott's attacks, but it also would have sent a genuine message that he was not approaching this as a partisan issue. It strikes me that he was gleeful that he had this deal as a wedge against Abbott, not just as a good policy idea.
Peter, surely the idea of getting Papua New Guinea on board and negotiating this with the Papua New Guinea Prime Minister, this rather comprehensive arrangement, I mean, isn't that the main game? And after all,
but to make
Stuart and Tony Abbott were supporting it until a couple of days ago. Now they're trying to sort of pick holes in it and undermine the whole scheme, because they don't want the government to be successful in deterring this increasing number of people coming by boat.
I'm sure that they don't, frankly, at a political level. However, it's also fair to say that they have legitimate concerns, don't they, about Labor's ability to implement this, given past mispractices in a range of areas.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that when you have the current circumstances, you don't try your level best to make sure that this works, because it's in the national interests of Australia. If, does Tony Abbott and Stuart want to be responsible for more people drowning at sea? I want this thing dealt with in a way that these people are not facing those kind of circumstances. That
they're facing something marginally better, which is a lifetime of living in Papua New Guinea if they're a genuine refugee.
Well, I think that's denigrating Papua New Guinea to an extent that's completely unfair.
Really? Its crime level is through the roof. Port Moresby, members of the military who I know who have been to Port Moresby say they feel safer in downtown Kabul than they do walking through Port Moresby. It's a pretty rough place.
Well, that may be the truth about crime in Port Moresby, but the circumstances under which these people are going to be moved to are to camps supervised by Australia and Papua New Guinea, with Australian police going over there. There's an extra 50 Australian federal police. I don't think that's the basis on which Stuart is opposed to these people being sent over to Papua New Guinea. Just like previously when they were going to be sent to Malaysia, suddenly all of the Liberals started complaining that they were all going to get the cane. I never heard the coalition complaining about human rights situation in Malaysia before.
Malaysia
they were going to be sent to Malaysia. We could have sent them easily there, and they would have had work and accommodation.
Unaccompanied minors over there. It was outrageous, and you should have been outraged at the Malaysian proposal.
All right, hold that thought, gentlemen. The best part about this segment has not been the debate. It's been me getting to watch Peter Bentley and Hugh McDermott sit there frustrated beyond belief that they're not in the conversation. Sorry, gentlemen. I'll bring you in after the commercial break. Bring you in after the commercial break. We're going to move on to other issues. You're watching Showdown. Back in a moment.
The whole family loves getting out and about in our Grand Vitara Navigator. And why wouldn't we, with all the extra space for Tiny? And you get loads of features, like a multimedia satellite navigation system with Bluetooth hands-free and audio streaming, a reversing camera and automatic transmission, all from just $29,990 drive away. Yeah, we love our Grand Vitara Navigator. It's a full-sized SUV with all the extras.
Wait, every case wins.
Expect the unexpected when you buy specially marked cases of Tui's Extra Dry. Win anything from samurai chopsticks to a basketball game in New York. Every case wins.
Where are we at anyway?
These aren't just tickets to some skinny jean boy band. These are the doors to paradise. And you are no longer ordinary parents. You are superheroes. How do we know? Because every year we thrill card members across the world with millions of the hottest tickets and the chance to see their idols. Tears of joy and pounding hearts. Just part of the rock and roll service we deliver daily. American Express. Realise the potential.
If you've been recommended a daily low-dose aspirin, ask for Cartier. Cartier has a special duentric coating which helps protect the stomach from irritation that can be caused by the aspirin. So ask your pharmacist for Cartier.
What's new? There's only one Bergen, and it now has a fresh new look. Bergen bread is low GI, with nutrients that are scientifically proven to deliver real health benefits. Try Soylin for women's well-being, whole-grained oats for heart and circulation, or rye for digestive balance. With unique recipes, Bergen tastes delicious. Try the new look Bergen today. Your body works better with Bergen. What's new where you see it first?
There are many types of, and Hungry Jack's has a new one. The new barbecue bacon cheese, packed with delicious ingredients and available in single or double. There's an for every appetite. The burgers are better at Hungry Jack's.
Wherever you're headed this snow season, make sure your first destination is snowbiz.com.au. It's where you'll find the biggest and best range of ski and board gear, clothing and accessories. Shop online anytime and we'll deliver it all to your door anywhere in Australia. For big brands at the best prices, snowbiz.com.au is your ultimate snow destination. Snowbiz, snow the way you like it.
Yeah, Snowbiz.
This program brought to you by the Audi Quattro Drive end of financial year sale. Visit your preferred Audi dealer or audi.com.au today.
Welcome back. You're watching Showdown, where I'm joined out of Brisbane by Stuart Robert. Stuart, a lot of right-wing fans on Twitter, they think that you are smashing the three lefties over here. I don't include myself in that. Thoughts? No response, just silent confidence, Michael Danby.
Well, he's welcome to it.
All right. I'm going to bring the panel in. Let's start. I want to talk about Huawei. Is that how you pronounce it? Huawei. All right. Now, Michael Danby, you have been a pretty big critic of China. There's divisions inside both parties about this, isn't there? On the Labor side, there are critics of China and there are strong supporters of China. On the coalition side, same thing happens. What's the essence of your criticism?
Well, there's a difference between opposing Chinese direct investment in Australia, which I strongly support and I think we should be absolutely colourblind over, and I encourage as much as Japanese and American investment, and I think both parties should do that, and I think certainly the government does, and an organisation which, on a risk-based assessment by the Australian government, after receiving advice from ASIO and other intelligence services, has decided not to let this company bid for the spinal cord of the Australian telecommunications system.
So what do you think we should do with them as a company?
Well, we should encourage them to be involved in other things, but we shouldn't let them be involved in the central nervous system of Australian telecommunications. And frankly, the opposition are hopelessly divided over this. There's George Brandis and Philip Ruddock on one side, and Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop, despite all of these revelations that were in the Financial Review on Friday by the former director of the CIA, General Hayden, blithely saying that they're going to have a review into whether Huawei should be involved in the NBN. And what this is, Peter, is lowest common denominator, no national interest, no interest in national security, the lowest price wins the bid as far as some of the Liberals are concerned.
Stuart Robert, how do you respond to that? You come from an army intelligence background, as I understand it. What's your view on Huawei?
Well, our view is you actually take the professional's word as it comes. So if the National Security Committee has actually put together a brief to the government that we haven't seen, that raises concerns, they need to be listened to. So one of the first things we'll be doing, if we are to win the election, is actually look at that advice that has come from the National Security Committee and from the national security community, and we'll make an assessment based on that advice.
Now let me bring the panel in on this. It is both sides of politics are divided, Peter Bentley. I know that Michael Danby likes to make it a message about the coalition, but both sides of politics are divided in terms of how we should approach China, as well as how we should approach some Chinese government-owned enterprises, including Huawei.
I think if we're looking at Huawei and others that have strong links to the Chinese government, obviously, and I agree with Stuart's point that we need to let the professionals in terms of ASIO, ASIS make recommendations. They're doing that to government. When it comes to national security, that's vital. But I think there is kind of a broader issue that we have to be aware of, that we aren't seeing either xenophobic or even competitors at a local level trying to paint all Chinese corporations in that space. And we've seen that at an agricultural level, with Chinese investment seeking to make significant investments in agricultural lands. We've seen that in a whole range of different kind of fundamental service sector roles. And for a country that is seeking more foreign investment, this is how we have historically grown over the last 200 years, and particularly being so well placed as we are in the Asian century, I think we have to always ensure that there are legitimate debates to be had, and we should have those, but we shouldn't ever let this flow over into tarring all Chinese corporations or all Chinese companies, because not only does that have a detrimental impact for the Australian national interest, but it also has problems with our trade relations in the long term.
Hugh McDermott?
Yeah, China, the US and the other countries are vital and important parts of our economy, as we are as part of the global economy. So, you know, what the key thing here is national security. Now, whether it be Chinese or whether it be Indonesian or any other country, it doesn't really matter, including the US. If our national interests are questioned on a national security basis, then yes, we should intercede. But, you know, if it doesn't, then we should promote more foreign direct investment. And you know, that's really what the debate is about here, is that we want more and more investment, and China is a key part of our economy, but we just have to make sure that when companies do come in and they do win contracts that impact on our national assets, that there isn't any security issues with it, and if there is, then they need to be removed.
All right, Michael Danby, final word on this subject?
Well, you know, I think that's a very sound point of view, that we ought to have a colourblind attitude to Chinese investment in Australia, including in agriculture. But Stuart got off too lightly, and his right-wing mates may be sort of twittering here in his support or tweeting in his support. But the coalition is absolutely irresponsible in the way they would allow the NBN to be accessed by Huawei. Can you imagine?
Well,
if
hang on a second. Let me go to Stuart Robert on that. I mean, isn't your point, Mr. Robert, that pending getting in government, you will take a look at the sort of references that Michael Danby has referred to, and that could be up for review, but it would take you to be the incumbents to make that sort of a decision?
In opposition, you don't get the opportunity to be briefed by the head of O&A or the head of DSD or DIO or DIGO or the full intelligence community. So if we are graced with government, we will sit there, listen to, take heed of and respect the full national security advice we get.
That's a fair point,
aren't your guys speaking to you? You know, Julie Bishop and Malcolm Turnbull both got briefings from the Director General of Security because they regarded this issue as so serious. And even after that, they said that there should be a review of whether Huawei is allowed to bid for the NBN. And only this weekend, despite the intervention of General Hayden, former director of the CIA, saying that this company was a danger to national security in this narrow telecommunications area. I accept the point about being open to Chinese investment in other areas.
The Chinese ambassador, though, has come out and said that none of this is true.
Well, for a start,
what would you expect him to say?
There is no Director General of Security. There's a DepSec Security Intelligence. There's a Director General of O&A. They're some of the, or two of the most senior people in the community.
Well, I'm sorry, it's a common expression, Stuart.
Understand the community you're talking about.
Don't be you're too nice a guy to be a smart aleck on this. That's a common way of referring to the Mr. Irvine, who's the head of ASIO, who you know very well has met with your Julie Bishop and Malcolm Turnbull.
But hang on, let me ask you this question, Michael Danby. Let's leave that as a comment. This is the comment from the Chinese ambassador. Facts speak louder than words. There may be some people doing things the article referred to. This is about Huawei's activities, but it is not Huawei or China for sure. That's the ambassador.
Huawei has a Communist Party committee that is the head of the company. It is considered a national champion and gets $30 billion of soft loans a year. Why do you reckon the Chinese state is doing that? Because they're a charity?
All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. Peter Bentley and Hugh McDermott, you guys were strongly advocating for a Kevin Rudd comeback. Do you sit here very smugly next to your Labor mate, Michael Danby, and say, what the hell were you doing back in Julia?
No, not at all. I mean, I came out and supported Rudd some time ago and got a bit of stick for it, especially from Gillard's office. But no, I mean, members of caucus have to make a decision of what they see there and then. I'm from Western Sydney. I was representing my membership in Western Sydney. And I'll say this, you know, they were saying Rudd. Now, people in Victoria and other places were saying the opposite. So, you know...
So is Victoria in for a tough time, Michael Danby, at the next election, having lost a local Prime Minister?
Look, of course, people were partisan for Julia Gillard in Victoria, but I also think that the polls are up everywhere for the Labor Party, including Victoria, for Kevin Rudd, and we're competitive in marginal seats in Melbourne, which we might not have been aiming at beforehand. So Stuart will need to come and visit the southern states a lot more and spend less time in Queensland, and I'm going up to the Queensland coast along with a lot of other parliamentary secretaries and ministers to try and take some seats off them. That's what the Prime Minister thinks can be done.
Stuart Robert, are you worried about the coalition party room having reduced representation from Queensland no matter what happens at the next election? Because even if Labor does lose and go down fighting in states such as Tasmania, New South Wales and Victoria, it looks like Kevin Rudd has the capacity to draw on a bit of parochialism in your home state and pick up a few seats.
I'm looking forward to coming and debating Michael Danby in Melbourne Ports after that kind invitation. I'm looking forward to coming and seeing Nick Champion in South Australia. And now that 40% of all Australian-made cars which are sold through employee share schemes are now at risk because of the FBT cuts, I am certainly looking forward to the opportunity to debating after that lovely kind invitation from my good friend Mr Danby.
I'll come and host it.
Sounds great. Australian people.
I'll come and host it and watch a footy game while I'm down there.
This is from the guys who want to cut $500 million from the auto industry as part of their plan.
Well, hang on a sec. Peter Bentley, let me ask you about the fringe benefits tax announcement. The word is that Treasury had been bowling this up time and time again, and even Wayne Swan could see what was wrong with it and wasn't prepared to embrace it yet. Voila! In comes Chris Bowen and Kevin Rudd, and they go for it.
Well, Peter, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, this is a streamlining of an entirely sensible
People
policy.
have already lost their jobs because of it.
Well, Peter, this is the whole point that we need to remember with this debate is this isn't money that's just kind of appearing that's subsidising people's tax bills. Whenever people get a write-off and a tax concession, all the rest of us that aren't benefiting from that are paying for it through increased taxes ourselves or through lost services. Now, if you have a legitimate reason to be claiming that for work purposes, that's fine, but it's not particularly onerous to say once every 5 years for a 3-month period, tell us about it. Now, if you think that is so onerous, then I think it's a pretty fair bet that you're rorting the system.
But they're not rorting. Right. There was a rule in place that you could take a 20% claim without providing any evidence via a logbook. That's been adjusted.
Absolutely.
It wasn't a rort, it was the way the system was.
No, this is my point, and let me be very clear. I'm not accusing anyone previously of rorting, but I'm saying if you are in a position where you say it is so onerous over every 5-year period to spend 3 months logging what you're doing with your car, that is so onerous that I'm not going to claim this deduction, then I would say there's a pretty fair chance that you weren't entitled to it.
We are right out of time. Last comment, Hugh McDermott.
I will say it is a rort. There's been plenty of tradies and other people doing these logbooks for years. When I had a car, I used to have to do the logbook and that for the union. The reality is that if you've been claiming this, then you shouldn't have been. Now, I think it's absolute crocodile tears. No, wait a sec. Have you had your say? Crocodile tears for the Liberals to be going on about the car industry.
Had their say.
We're going to destroy
I
Holden.
have a 10-second countdown,
and
we are out of time.
As it go along. What you guys need is a plan, a real solutions plan. That actually might help you out.
You got it on screen.
Take you down the Holden factory.
All right, explain to the time out there. Stuart Robert, thanks very much. Stuart Robert, thanks very much for your company.
We're going
to go to an ad break. I'm just going to thank all 3 Labor people at one time. Thanks for your company. See you on Friday for Contrarians.